Hello, and welcome to another episode of EKU Online's eCast series. EKU Online's mission is to change lives by providing access to affordable and high-quality degree programs in meaningful disciplines that positively impact our society, and we thank you for joining us today. Today, we are joined by Dr. Laura Barthel, Assistant Professor of Accounting in the College of Business and Technology, who currently teaches accounting and entrepreneurship. Before coming to EKU, she was an internal auditor at Tempur-Sealy International. She was responsible for the Sarbanes-Oxley implementation and refinement, risk assessment design, designing and implementing process automation projects, corporate entrepreneurial initiatives, and coordinating and auditing in conjunction with the external and financial audit. Dr. Barthel is an alumnus of EKU with a bachelor's degree in business and marketing education and a post-baccalaureate certificate in accounting. Additionally, she earned a master's of accountancy from the University of Kentucky and a PhD in accounting from Kennesaw State University. She is also a certified public accountant. When she's not teaching, helping students, or researching, she enjoys playing with her two daughters, Emma, who is 12, and Whitley, who is 9, working with her husband, TJ, on their cattle farm, serving small businesses as an accounting advisor or board member, spending time with family and church family, or simply enjoying the outdoors. Well, welcome, Dr. Barthel, and thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate your time.
Thank you, Sam. I appreciate it.
So before we get into the nuts and bolts of the discipline, we're very curious what caused you to make the jump from internal accounting at a very large private sector company to teaching in public higher education.
Well, the transition actually begins way back, and it begins from roots of coming from a family of teachers. My grandmother taught in a one-room schoolhouse. My mother is a former professor here at EKU. And growing up, I saw my mom grading papers, and I said, I never want to do that. That does not look fun. However, what I also saw was her passion to help her students, to see them excel in careers, and in just that passion that she had was instilled in me. But at the same time, I also saw a father who was a CPA, and I loved talking to him about taxes and that side as well. And so while I was going to school here at EKU, I also had the passion for teaching, but wasn't really sure that that was the route I was going to go, and whether or not I would want to do it at the college level. But I had a professor who said, no, this is what you have to do. And so just as I hope to do in my students, I had a professor who inspired me as well. But so I knew that that was my trajectory, and that was the path that I wanted to go towards. But I also knew that I did not want to enter the classroom without some major practical experience. And so I actually researched and determined what accounting role would help me the most and give me the broadest perspective for my students. And that was internal audit, because as an internal auditor, I was able to see every single facet of the company. So not only the accounting, but I audited marketing and how they picked how to put their ads on TV, and how that relationship with those ad agencies worked and those television agencies worked. So across the entire company, every process basically had some touch or control from the Sarbanes-Oxley side. So it really gave me a perspective for my students that I could share with them possible careers inside of companies. And then by working with the external auditors, I was able to see what they do. And that's a field that my students go into a lot. So it just really gave me that foundational, and I'm thankful that I had that opportunity and I was able to find that role, especially in a company like Tempur-Sealy. I mean, what an amazing experience that was. It's a phenomenal company with phenomenal people, and I learned so much while I was there. So really the transition was planned, and I just kind of took that path in order to get to where I am.
Dr. Barthel, why study accounting? What's the career job outlook for this discipline?
Well, accounting is often termed as the language of business, and if you understand accounting, then you understand the transactions that happen inside of a business, and you understand it from a financial dollar perspective, and make sure that you're going to be there tomorrow. So I think that because it's so foundational to business, there are a lot of opportunities. There are definitely lots of opportunities within accounting in and of itself, but also we find that our accounting students have opportunities in other fields because of their understanding of those financial and underlying transactions.
Dr. Barthel, where do some of our graduates work today? Are they all in accounting? Do some of the graduates work in other areas? Can you touch on that?
Absolutely. As I mentioned in the other question, there are definitely lots of opportunities. For example, we have a student who graduated from our accounting program just a couple of years ago and is moving up rather quickly in a large manufacturing company here in Kentucky. They're actually an international company, but so they could do that. I have a couple of students each year, or at least one student each year that go to law school, and they want to do tax law for corporations or for states and different entities. So I have other students who they go to an accounting firm, and they do either auditing or tax within the accounting firm, and they have several clients that they serve there. I have other students who go to a company, maybe a local company in their area, and they manage all the accounting functions there. Or, maybe they start in accounts receivable and making sure that customers pay. And then when they've done a good job at that, then they move up and they may be a director of accounting. I've also had several students go to the nonprofit organization route and help nonprofits manage all the filings that they have to do, and then also manage the donation and using those funds properly. So there are lots of opportunities for sure. And it's amazing every time I go to help a student find a job that really each student can find their own path with their degree and find something that is rewarding and that they desire to want to do with their accounting degree.
Obviously a very versatile degree, since like you said, it's involved in every aspect of every kind of business. So that's a great answer. With the program completely online, what do the demographics of your student population look like? In other words, what kind of students is the program attracting, and what kind of students find success?
So I think there's a couple of kinds of students if I had to categorize. There are students who are seeking their undergraduate accounting degree, and some of them have maybe majored in something before and then decided, well, that may not be the track. Some of them are working a lot while going to school, and then, they kind of are in kind of a bookkeeping role, or maybe accounts payable where they're, making the payments for the company, or accounts receivable. And they decide, what, I kind of like this accounting thing. Or I've had several for medical billing. They've been working for a hospital or healthcare institution doing medical billing, and realize, hey, I like the numbers. I like these transactions. And so they want to finish that degree and get that undergraduate accounting degree. So that's one type of student. Another type of student is one that has a degree in something else. It could be history, could be anthropology, could be English, but they come back because they have some life experience in other roles and decide that they really would like to pursue their accounting certificate. And several of them actually want to get their CPA license too. And this accounting certificate that we offer is so unique because it's a post-bachelorate. And like I said, you could have a bachelor in English, any wide variety, and you can come back to EKU in this online program and get all the accounting core that you need. There's a couple of prereq business courses, but just mainly being able to focus on those accounting degrees and then sit for the CPA, which provides a wealth of opportunity through that. So those students generally come with some life and work experience to the table. I would say for both of those categories of students, what makes them successful are those that want to learn. that they're not just there for a grade, and they're not trying to check off a checklist to make sure that they get all the points on every item. But what their main concern is that they learn. And those students are the ones that are successful in learning the material and then seeking out opportunities and finding those.
As you meet and advise students, how do you respond to the question that they ought to major in accounting when there are so many other options in the business program?
I think it goes back to them, it being the language of business, and that, you know, they can major in anything, but if they start with the foundation of accounting, it gives them a specialization and a knowledge set that can't be gained, but can be utilized through all the other positions. So I think that that's really the selling point for accounting, is that you have a knowledge set that other disciplines won't have, but yet you can do all those other disciplines as well. Not that there's not stuff to learn too. I mean, they'll still have to pick up some other things, but sometimes those other things are easy to pick up after you're in the workforce.
So here at the Instructional Design Center, we took a look at several of the courses that you teach, and we were all struck about the level of engagement you seem to have with your students. A lot of one-on-one time, a lot of group time, using tools like VoiceThread. So within that context or framework, please tell our audience a little bit about your philosophy of teaching online as it differs from obviously teaching in person.
You know, for both modalities, both in person and online, the key for me is that student engagement piece, because I can help them learn if I understand where they're coming from, or I understand in terms of how they're learning the material. And so that student engagement piece is really important for me, no matter whether it's face-to-face or online. And class to class, that differs as to what that engagement looks like. For example, some of my upper level accounting classes, such as corporate tax, we have regular online meetings. And because it's a difficult context, I need to know in the moment that they're learning it, how they're taking that difficult content, and really what their brains are doing with it. And so sometimes it's that method that we would use, but then other times I'm able to use VoiceThread, and the use of VoiceThread has really helped me facilitate my philosophy in teaching online. And really my philosophy in online is efficient, high impact. And what I mean by that is, you know, students come to online a lot because of the flexibility, right? They can take their course anywhere at any time. And also they are working full time. And so learning does need to be efficient, because there are lots of other ways they could learn it, especially with the growth of the on-demand options that are out there. And so if I'm going to serve something that's quality and something that's desirable and useful to them, then I need to strive to make it efficient. But in that, not give up the rigor or the depth at what they learn it. So I want it to be very high impact in whatever we do. So for example, with VoiceThread, last week, my students, they worked, it was probably about 60 different problems. Okay. And at any one of them, to work 60 different problems would have been an astronomical amount of time to work difficult tax problems. But by putting it on VoiceThread, collectively, they are working those, you know, each person has a role, each person has a piece of that large multiple faceted problem. And so with VoiceThread, they communicate via voice their response to a specific item. In some weeks, they also have a reviewer, which in accounting is important because we typically take that approach. Someone does the task and then somebody reviews it. So that's kind of a common technique that we use in accounting. And I'm able to use that on VoiceThread, so they can reply and give some feedback or elaboration. So what that does is, for these 60 problems that would have taken them hours and hours and hours, we have, you know, 50 minutes maybe of recorded voice that explains and reviews and then elaborates throughout that. And then I can engage with them as well to say, that's great, let's, add this, or did you think about this rule and how that applies? Or I could also give feedback to say, hey, we're getting off track here. Let's, this is the correct way to think about it. So it provides that engagement, but also it's asynchronous, so they can do that part on their own. So it provides them that flexibility. So to me, really, I would sum my philosophy up and utilizing the context of VoiceThread as efficient, high impact. At the end of the day, I'll strive for my students to know the content so deeply that they can help others see it. And I use a little acronym as see it, meaning they can state it. So they can state the concept, they can explain the concept, they can elaborate and give examples on that concept, and then I would be to illustrate it. Now they have a lot of drawings from me. Sometimes they're not so great using online technologies. My illustrations aren't so great on online, but it does give us a way to see it, actually visually see the concept as well through a drawing or through a graph or something like that. So that's really, I want my students to learn the foundational concepts at that deep level so they can see it, help others see it.
We're constantly amazed watching our faculty utilize all these different tools that are out there in order to achieve that level of engagement that so many faculty are striving for just in the classroom. And obviously we're biased, but I think our faculty are exceptionally good at doing what they do online, because it is a different methodology. Like you said, it's a different modality, it's a different approach. Traditional things that work don't always, work online that would work in the classroom. So it's very inspiring to see.
It is, and I've learned so much from my colleagues, and definitely my philosophy has been shaped from colleagues. And we have regular, over this past summer, we had regular meetings, I think even with the IDC, where different faculty shared their approach and how they approach online. And so, each time in hearing that, it helps us all develop. And I know that I've been helped by that a lot. So it's been great to have great colleagues.
You've been recognized as an excellent classroom instructor, evidenced by your winning the Jack L. Dyer Excellence in Teaching Award in 2018 and 19. And now you've taught in this other modality we call online. So would you just briefly compare and contrast the two different teaching modes? I know we just touched on that, but just tell our listeners what you like most about both.
First, I would be remiss if I didn't mention Dr. Dyer. He actually just passed this last week, and so we celebrated his life and his impact on students. And his quote, similar to the mission stated at the very beginning of this podcast, was that we change lives for the better. And no matter what the modality is, whether it's in-seat or online, the real goal and mission is that we can give students an education and something that will impact their lives for the better. And so I think that has to be the premise for both modalities, is really his vision and passion there. And I try to implement that as well, that it's not about my preferences in either modality, or even my preference for how I want my students to learn. The end goal is that they learn it. And sometimes that requires my flexibility in determining how do they need it. And so I really take a service approach as well. And that may change semester to semester, student by student. So in comparing and I think that was the question, right? Comparing and contrasting that. Yeah. So in comparing and contrasting that, I think the key is looking at each class individually and thinking about what's needed most in the content for that course. And so that will vary, or my approach to that would vary depending on the course and the class.
Switching gears a bit, I'd like to ask you a question related to the other discipline you teach, and that's entrepreneurship. Given the tough economic times of 2020, which have spilled over now into 2021, do you see the spirit of entrepreneurship growing with new opportunities or waning because of the hurt economy and fear of the unknown?
Well, so in entrepreneurship, we say that it usually develops from one of two methods, either inherently entrepreneurial, or there's an idea, right? So someone is just, hey, I want to start something, and that's just ingrained in them, and that's what they want to do. Or somebody has a great idea, and therefore that drives that entrepreneur. But the second way in which it develops is by need. So when there's a need for it. And so I would look at right now, coming out of 2020 and 21, is that there's a need for innovation and entrepreneurship, some created because of job loss. And so now they're trying to figure out, what am I going to do next? Companies, their market has changed, their channels have changed, how they're going to get their product to their customers, their product and service to their customers has changed. And so there's a need to create something else. So there are lots of opportunities that I believe are going to arise. And I think we're seeing that in 2021. So yeah, I think that 2020, 2021 is really going to spur those opportunities, and really the need for students who are graduating to be entrepreneurial as well. So for example, let's take, some of the jobs that may have been manual, they figured out they had to do it online due to COVID or whatever. And so, a job may have been cut. And so as an accountant, then you decide, well, how does my role need to change? And what do I need to do to make sure that I'm providing value to this company? And so even in our own roles, even though it's accounting and not entrepreneurship, even, you've got to say, what can I do next? And have that mindset to be entrepreneurial and create your own job, or create your own new opportunities within a company, especially given all the change that's occurred.
There's been a lot of flying the plane as we build it, but this past year, I think. But once again, I mean, it is a testament to our faculty to watch the adjustment that has been made rather quickly in the scope of things.
Yes.
Has there been any fallout in accounting or entrepreneurship during the course of the pandemic? Or do you anticipate any negative long-term impact? Will the job market continue to look promising for these fields?
Again, with entrepreneurship, I think that there's definitely, it's going to open up. There's going to be some opportunities there for innovation and new companies, new ways of doing business, because we were forced to. From an accounting perspective, there are plenty of opportunities. As the semester is closing out, I've been spending several hours with students applying for jobs, searching for jobs, and that's a process. And a lot of students don't realize that it is a full-time job, finding a career. And I keep telling them that, like, you have to put in the time. It's not going to just fall in your lap. There are great opportunities out there, but you have to seek them out. And so anyway, there are lots of opportunities in accounting. Has it changed? Yes, absolutely. We mentioned about with working in the office, a lot of times these big four accounting firms, for example, we call the big four the top, like the largest accounting firms. There are four main ones. And typically, they don't recruit at EKU, not because we're not at par, but because of our size and because of our students typically like to stay in this area. And so they only have resources to really promote at the institutions that are much larger than us. So mainly it's just a size issue. And I have heard several in conferences this last few months indicate that they are excited because now their boundaries have opened up through COVID, and that they're realizing that they can have employees that aren't right there at the local main big city hub. And so that is great news for our students, that they're going to have opportunities that they probably didn't have before if they weren't willing to move to those larger cities. So that's very exciting for us in accounting. We had one student who just got an offer with Ernst & Young, which is one of the big fours. I had another one interview last month with KPMG, which is one of the big four. And then I had another student who interviewed with Deloitte just last week. So, this is exciting. And we're actually seeing that happen right now with those boundaries opened up, due to COVID. And then the other thing is how your work life looks, and that, traditionally it may have been in the office, and now, they are maybe pulling a few days away from the office and working at home, and then a few days in the office as well. For some accountants, there's a lot of travel. And I think that through COVID, they found ways in which that travel can be minimized a little bit to where they don't have to go and stay maybe weeks somewhere to audit it, but they're able to do some online and then go for the final visit. There's definitely opportunities and changes coming about that are exciting.
As tough as this year has been, I think for everybody on obviously a global scale, it's really reassuring and nice to see the silver linings kind of creeping out about what we're taking away from this and able to learn from and build something new.
Absolutely. It's exciting.
Dr. Barthel, we mentioned some of your research interest in the opening, but please tell us, what are your research passions?
Well, I'm sure some wonder the switch from accounting, entrepreneurship, how do those two relate? It seems like that's two sides of the brain. And it is two sides of the brain, but my research interests are formed really from my work experience and industry in a whole. So, for example, the reason that I'm accounting and entrepreneurship is while I was at Tempur Sealy, and this was back in 2005, 6, so it's been a while, but I was creating automated processes. And at that time, process automation wasn't such a big, wasn't well known, but I was developing those processes, and then we were able to template those, and Deloitte could then use those in their consulting firm or take those processes on. And so, when you think about that, that was entrepreneurship within a corporation. So we were utilizing what we were doing and building a product or something that could be shared. And so with that, that came my passion for entrepreneurship. But those were all accounting transactions, and the process automation, that was all a new technology. So in seeing how from entrepreneurship to accounting to system automation and those new technologies, that's really where my research interests lie. And a lot of times I look at it mainly from a tax perspective, because a lot of times the tax or the government will incentivize behaviors such as entrepreneurial behaviors and entrepreneurial investing through the tax regulations. And so what I've been looking at is, what are those tax regulations? Are they doing what they are intending and incentivizing that behavior appropriately? And are there other ways in which those behaviors could be incentivized? And really, when we say incentivized, not just say, hey, we want to give you a carrot for you to go and do this activity or invest in this, but understanding that investing in those entrepreneurial firms creates a risk. And so that incentive is not only just, hey, here's your carrot, but also here's your offset. We want to offset that risk by giving you a tax deduction, right? Or decrease the cost of that investment without the government having to shift out money. And so there's a lot of opportunity there, and looking at how those tax regulations impact those behaviors. And right now, currently, I'm looking at it from the banking perspective and the financial services industry, and their desire and willingness to invest in technologies that would help them in their accounting and financial services.
Please share with our listeners a little bit about your personal interests. We mentioned a little bit about your family in the opening. What is it you like to do in your spare time, if you have spare time?
Right. Yes. And the research takes some time. But in my spare time, I do love being with my family and all things outdoor. We love camping and fishing and hunting together. And then we do have a family farm. And so my husband and I actually together run that farm. So in the summertime a lot, I'll be on the tractor in the day and working on research at night. But that's been really fun for us, and we enjoy spending that time together.
Is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners that you think we haven't touched on, or anything you'd like to touch on?
One, if they're interested in accounting, definitely, speak to a faculty member, speak to someone from eCampus that can kind of give you a little bit more idea about what possible careers there might be, because they are endless. But I think it's important to have that conversation to know what those opportunities are. And again, those are all individualized. So, each student, I don't tell them this is the path you need to go, because each student has different interests and abilities. So I think that conversation is important. So I would encourage students, if they're interested in accounting or any other business major, that they reach out and have a conversation with somebody from eCampus or the faculty members. And then my second thing would be just thank you to eCampus. I appreciate the quality that you all support and encourage, and keep pushing for, because I think that with online education, that's really important, that we're providing these students with quality opportunities to learn deeply. So thank you all very much. I appreciate your work.
Well, thank you, Dr. Barthel. We appreciate your time and expertise in this area. Obviously, your passion for your students and your fields is very palpable. On a personal note, I can see that passion runs in your family after working with your mother, Dr. Jana Weiss, who I hold in very high esteem. It's been a pleasure getting to know you a little bit better. I look forward to the day when we can do these in person. But again, we want to just thank you so much for your time and your commitment to EKU Online.
Thanks, Sam. It's great. Appreciate it.